Leslie.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Whoops.
Cool sound effects, Chris. I wish I could do that.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday.
And Daniel, do you know if TJ is still planning to join us?
I'm going to check with him right now.
Okay.
I see Chief Jake Hess is on this as well too. Jake, it's good to connect with you again.
You too. Thank you. I'm managing 2 Zoom meetings right now, so I have Chief Good will be running lead on the one for Morgan Hill, and I'm listening to both. So good to hear you and see you.
That requires a lot of skill, Jake.
He's got 2 ears.
2 ears.
Yeah, the 5 counties are catching up to me this week.
Okay. All right, well, it looks like it is just about 5:30 here. We have a few people trickling in. I see Chief Palsgrove. Thank you, Chief. And I think we still have some participants, but we have a very full, whoops, was someone saying something? No? Okay. Anyway, good evening, everybody, and thank you to all our community members who are joining us this evening. My name is Maureen Tobin. I'm the Communications and Engagement Director. Our City Manager, Christina Turner, was not able to be here this evening, so in her absence, I'll be facilitating. We have a full evening of talking about emergency preparedness in general, but specifically preparing for wildfires and the public safety power shutoffs with PG&E. So we have a couple of PG&E guests with us and our very own Assistant Chief Dwight Good and Jennifer Ponce from Emergency Services. But before we jump into the formal presentation or conversation for this evening, I do have just a few quick announcements for you. One, hopefully most of you on the call received an email blast or saw notifications on Nextdoor or social media about the extreme heat warning in the Santa Clara Valley. At the time that went out, the only cooling center available for South County was the Gilroy Library, which will be open on Saturday and Sunday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. But since that time, we've been able to make it work for the Centennial Recreation Center lobby to be open from 12 to 9 starting tomorrow on the weekdays, and over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 5. We'll be pushing out more information about that, but just wanted you to be aware. Michelle is going to put in the chat the link where you can get more information about heat safety tips from the county and also where other cooling centers are located. We also want to make sure you are aware that there are more testing opportunities coming up at our very own City Council chamber. The city and the county have partnered to bring 3 more testing opportunities. These are testing opportunities that do require you to register, but anyone is welcome, and it's for people who do not have symptoms. You do not have to have insurance, but if you do have insurance, when you register, they will want to know what your insurance is so that they can potentially get reimbursed. So the next testing dates will be August 25th, September 8th, and September 22nd. The links to register for those become live 3 days before the testings. So you won't see the opportunity to register for Morgan Hill until 3 days before the testing site. Michelle will put that link in the chat as well. And additionally, there are other testing opportunities, pop-ups, and places like St. Louis, or excuse me, DePaul Health Center, which have testing on a regular basis. And you can find those at another website link that Michelle will provide. last but not least, our town halls, as you probably are aware, have moved to every second and fourth Thursday of the month. This started last month in July. This month, though, we will not be having a town hall on the fourth Thursday. That would be August 27th. And this is due to a series of activities for Women's Week that week, and we don't want to be competing with them. Those will be some great activities for people to take part in. So our next town hall will be on September 10th. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers, and then once they get done with their brief presentations, we can have a Q&A. We have Jennifer Ponce. Jennifer, if you can wave.
Hi, everybody.
Emergency Services. We have Dwight Good from Fire, and special guest Daniel Cedeno from PG&E, Public Affairs. Don Hall, also from PG&E, a senior manager and local customer service lead. And did TJ pop on? I'm not seeing TJ.
Yeah, TJ joined by phone. PG&E has some issues with allowing Zoom on our company laptops, and he wasn't aware of that. So yeah, no worries, but he is on the call.
Okay, awesome. And we have TJ Welch, PG&E Public Safety Specialist. So I'm going to turn over this important conversation to Dwight and Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. Just so you all know, Dwight and I have given many presentations together over the years, so we had asked Maureen, could he and I both speak at the same time? I'm going to set the stage, but ask for input from Dwight as we go along. And what I wanted to do, everyone, is start off and talk about the resources that we have in the city of Morgan Hill every day, what we are at risk for in terms of emergencies, how the city manages and supports and responds to those emergencies, what you all can do as community members to mitigate the impacts of these large-scale events. And then I'm going to hand it over to Dwight. How does that sound, Dwight?
That sounds great.
Okay. So the next slide, please. And what you will, oh, there we are. The next slide, please. So this picture, I wanted to set the stage so that everyone understands how we are staffed in Morgan Hill for the everyday events. When our calls for service are what we consider normal. And in terms of the police department, just so that you all know, my Office of Emergency Services, resides in the police department, but I am responsible for the entire city, the city employees who are disaster service workers, and then all of you, the community members. And there is one of me in every city in Santa Clara County. So there's 15 of us that get together regularly and help each other succeed, and it's a great group. But what you're seeing here in the top left, obviously, is one of our patrol cars. And on a typical day, we have 3 patrol cars out in the field who are staffed with 1 police officer. And those 3 patrol officers are overseen by 1 sergeant who is known as the watch commander. Now, I'm going to do my best to explain the fire department, but my buddy Dwight's going to step in if I do not give an adequate picture. But we have 3 fire stations in Morgan Hill. One is on East Dunn, one is on Old Monterey Road, and then fire headquarters, Old Monterey Road, and the headquarters is on Monterey Road. And Dwight, could you talk about how they are staffed? How many firefighters, paramedics are within those units, please?
Within those 3 stations, primarily at the service of Morgan Hill City, you have 3 fire apparatus, each staffed with 3 people, and one of them is a paramedic. So we have 3 paramedics, 1 on each engine, all day, every day.
Sounds great. And you see the little ambulance down in the bottom left corner. A lot of community members are surprised to hear that we have 1 ambulance in town, 1 ambulance staging, and it is in a home that's dedicated for EMS near the 7-Eleven on Main Street. And then the bottom right picture depicts our public works team, which is comprised of engineering and utilities. And public works folks are also known as first responders. And my day-to-day for the Office of Emergency Services on a normal day is working towards the four phases of emergency management, which is preparation, response, recovery, and mitigation. So that's what we look like on a normal day-to-day basis. Now, if we can go to the next slide.
Hey, Jennifer?
Yes.
Can I make one insertion there? The third engine in Morgan Hill is actually split funded. Morgan Hill pays for half of the personnel costs on that engine. The engine is actually owned by the fire district.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much. And then I think I'd like to also add, at the police department, we do have detectives that are working within our building as well, who do frequently respond out when needed. So thanks for that, Dwight. Okay, what we're looking at here is some pictures of some actual events that we had in Morgan Hill, but I really wanted to point out to folks what are large-scale events in Morgan Hill. What do we need to be thinking about that can overwhelm those everyday resources that we just talked about? And I'm sure many of you who've lived here for a while remember our communication shut down back in 2009. And then the top right, you all remember we used to flood frequently when we had heavy rainfall. The city has done a lot of work to mitigate those issues in our downtown area. So that is not as much of a problem as it used to be. And obviously down on the bottom, wildland fires, which Dwight will hit on a little later, that we are at risk for both in our west and east hills. There are also other events. It's very clear right now that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and that's not something that typically is on our radar, although it is talked about. Of course, some other things that we cannot control, some man-made events, terrorism, again, the communication outage, and even things such as civil unrest, and then the more obvious, fire, floods, earthquakes that we talked about a little bit. We do follow a system in Morgan Hill, and it's actually followed nationwide, just so everyone knows. It's called the National Incident Management System. The acronym is NIMS, and NIMS came out of September 11th when President Bush was in office, and that is a nationwide approach that is used to work on the four phases of emergency management, so that across the country we are all following the same system. I do always like to point out that California was ahead of the game. And when President Bush made the directive to develop NIMS, California was very closely looked at, thanks to the fire service and events following a difficult response to the Oakland fires. California developed a system that was in place prior to national. So I always like to let community members know that there is a method and to what we are following in these large-scale events. And if you could go to the next slide, please, Michelle. I'm really excited for everybody to see this picture, because this is a picture of your Emergency Operations Center team. We call it an EOC. And in this picture, these are city employees. I see a CERT member in the picture here, and some of our partners. I can see CAL FIRE here, American Red Cross. We come together frequently. We train so that we can work well when the big one hits. And this picture, actually, we, believe it or not, PG&E, you'll get a kick out of this, we were practicing our response to a public safety power shutoff. No kidding. We had a full-scale test that we ran, and I believe it was 2 days later when we actually had a real PSPS. So that was kind of remarkable for all of us. So our goals, when we call it an activation, when we get this team together, it's because our everyday resources in the field that we talked about have been overwhelmed. And those folks now need support from a larger group to ensure they get what they need to be successful out in the field. And what you're looking at, we have 5 different teams within the EOC, and they are management, operations, planning, logistics, and finance. And that's, you can see the different color of vests. That's how we kind of tell who's on what team during an activation. And I will share with you that our goals, our primary goals, are always the same. They are to minimize loss of life, to minimize injury, to minimize property damage, and to get our city's vital services up and running as quickly as possible. And so this is normally what an EOC operation looks like. I will let all of you know that we have a backup EOC in case our primary facility perhaps is affected by an earthquake or something else. We do have a backup EOC. And this won't surprise anybody. We are currently under a local emergency proclamation for the COVID-19 virus, and we aren't meeting like this picture. We are meeting like all of us are meeting right now. We use Microsoft Teams, and we are managing our resources in that way, something I certainly never thought I would see in my career, but it is quite honestly working really well. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so, to minimize the impact from any of these large-scale events, it is really upon each and every one of us to be prepared. It is a real unpopular message to hear, but when these big events happen, fire, law, EMS, public works, they're going to be extremely overwhelmed, and our own personal emergencies most likely are not going to be their priority. So to minimize the impact to us, to our families, our loved ones, we need to take ownership and become prepared. And it really is not difficult. You can start slowly in developing a 72-hour kit. The recommendation is that you have a kit in your home, in your car, at work, all of those things for a minimum of 3 days. And what your emergency kit looks like is going to be really different than what mine looks like. Our families are unique. Our lives are unique. Some of you have pets, some of you have children, some of you may have medically fragile individuals living with you. All of those things need to be taken into consideration when you're building your kit. At the very basic, of course, you want to have water, a gallon of water per person per day, food for 3 days, and non-perishable is best. Batteries, flashlights, first aid kits, just the very basic needs, which, by the way, I have a website at the end that has a super easy printable list that you can print out and customize for your own kit's needs. Dwight, sometimes you like to add stuff here. Is there any?
I usually tell people to imagine they're taking their family on a quick vacation and think about what they would need for 3 days at the coast. During an emergency, cash is critical, and small bills are best.
Absolutely, because you don't want to be overcharged for anything. And quite honestly, we could spend an entire hour dedicated to this subject matter. And we do have a very detailed presentation on building an emergency kit. That is perhaps something I could offer up at another town hall. So if you could please go to the next slide. So it's really important also for folks to create a family plan. These are questions and conversations you want to have in your home with your family before the emergency. Just a conversation around the dinner table, in the living room, and answering questions like where is our neighborhood meeting place? Where is our family going to meet? Locally, out of town, emergency contacts, family information. and have all these conversations with your family up front. And it actually can be fun getting your family involved. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. Oh, actually, Michelle, would you mind going back for a moment? I'm sorry. I just wanted to point out to everybody that website, ready.gov, is an excellent website that I highly recommend for all emergency preparedness. So please take a moment and check that out. Now we can advance. And then there's additional ways that all of us can strengthen our readiness, and these are things that are available to all Morgan Hill community members and folks that live in our sphere of influence. We offer a program that's called Map Your Neighborhood. It's free, and we did our first Zoom Map Your Neighborhood last week, and it was really successful. It's a way to get small groups of homes together to learn about what resources each homeowner has that can be of help in an emergency. Some of people's vulnerabilities can be discovered, and it's really neighbors helping neighbors. It's a real grassroots program. I highly recommend anyone that hasn't done Map Your Neighborhood, please to reach back to me. We also have amateur radio, which is ham radio, and ham radio, you do have to get your license to be able to use a ham radio. And I, by the way, am KJ6EST. And it's super easy to get your license, and then you're able to come up during emergencies and communicate. And our city has a very strong ham radio team. Community Emergency Response Team is an excellent course that empowers individuals to learn medical skills, search and rescue skills. Dwight even gets out there and puts a fire extinguisher in the students' hands, and they put out small fires. And we have a lot of fun. It's a 9-unit course. Sadly, with COVID, we can't get together right now, but we are about ready to launch an online opportunity so that we can keep the program going. And many of these wonderful volunteers, over 400 we've trained in Morgan Hill, are on this call right now because I see your names. And then last but not least, how are you going to be warned if the city has something we want to tell you? Chances are you're going to be warned if the internet is up. You're going to be alerted through what's called Alert SCC. It's a countywide alerting system. If you don't have a landline phone, which not many of us do anymore, you have got to register. And Maureen, could you put on the chat the link for them to register if you don't mind? That'd be so great.
Yep, we can do that.
And the city does not abuse Alert SCC. We're not going to send you messages about parades and things like that, but we are going to send you things when you need to listen and you need to take action. And you would be notified on a landline, on a cell phone, on an email, and on a text. It's an excellent system. And unfortunately, it's just very difficult for some reason to get people to register. So please take a moment to do that. It's super easy. I have parents that live in San Jose.
And if I could just add.
Please do. I was just going to say, you can register for multiple cities within our county. Go, Maureen.
No, Jennifer, I was just going to also remind everybody that we also locally send out information by posting on Nextdoor, by sending e-blasts, and through social media with the police department and our City of Morgan Hill Engage Facebook page. So there's multiple ways to be updated. A massive emergency is going to come through Alert SCC. Some of the smaller things might just come through our own communication channels.
Absolutely. That's great, Maureen. And of course, what we'd really like to see is community members to sign up for all of those opportunities that you just mentioned. Let's see. I believe the next slide, we're going to hand it over to Dwight. So Maureen,
Okay.
There we go.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer, that's a great warm-up. The emphasis, ladies and gentlemen, is on personal preparedness. At times like these, I often tell the public that we'll provide the offense. CAL FIRE is the finest wildland firefighting force in the world, I think. We'll provide the offense, but we do need you to provide defense. And that starts with your home and your yard. Statistically, houses that pass a defensible space inspection in spring are 70% more likely to survive a wildfire. That matters a lot. So if you need help or guidance in making sure that your home and your yard are actually ready for wildfire, CAL FIRE has a Ready for Wildfire website. Michelle, there's some links in here if you can share those with the public. CAL FIRE also has an app that you can obtain from that website that will give you a whole bunch of guidance and information on local fires. There's a ton of information there and more than I'm going to have time to tell you about tonight. Also locally, the Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council is a wealth of information. They can even send people to your house to talk to you in person and provide guidance and resources. This year, because of the COVID pandemic, they also launched a shelter in yard campaign to emphasize to the public that you can indeed prepare your home for wildfire and still social distance. And lastly, but certainly not least significant, the NFPA FireWise Communities Program is a fabulous source of information, and some insurance companies actually offer a discount for homeowners living in FireWise dedicated communities. So again, Michelle, there were some web links in the bottom of this. If you could share those with the group, we'll move on to the next slide. Can we go to the next slide? Can you hear me? Ah, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. So right now you're probably very aware that we're going into a period of excessive heat. It is hot, it is dry, the winds are picking up. And it's going to be very important to know that you have reduced your risks of loss, the risks to your property, your loved ones, your possessions. One of the places that you need to start is by checking with your insurance underwriter. Make sure that your policy has been updated and that it's adequate. Statistically, again, we find that 40% of property owners find that they don't have enough insurance after a loss, and that is a horrible time to find out that you don't have enough insurance. Also, you want to be sure that you've got enough coverage to provide alternate or temporary housing in the event that you lose your home, because post-fire recovery in California now, usually it on average takes about 36 months. That's a very long time. It's a very long time to not have a house. And again, there are some web links below this tab. Michelle, if you can share those with the group. Resources available to you to help you prepare. Again, I'll send you back to the Ready for Wildfire, the CAL FIRE webpage, and also the IBHS Research Center has a great website with a ton of information. They are doing some cutting edge research these days. And let's move on to the next slide. This is a good segue for our friends from PG&E. A lot of times a disaster is accompanied by a power failure. And it could be an earthquake, it could be a fire, it could be a flood, but the lights go out. So to prepare for that, you need to know that battery backup is an option for garage door motors. And the whole idea there is to ensure that you can open your garage door at least one more time after the lights go out. To that end, we would encourage you to have flashlights handy in your house, near your bed, near your car, or in your car. And then we'll move on to talking about home hardening. This is a newer concept that is really getting some traction in the state of California, home hardening. And the biggest reason for this is that we find year in and year out that a lot of the homes we're losing in wildfires were attacked by flying embers from a fire maybe half a mile away. So the emphasis is on keeping those embers out of your home, addressing combustible exterior feature, adding tempered glass, replacing old windows with tempered glass windows because they don't break in the heat. And again, I'll emphasize good property hygiene because it matters. That is the largest predictive indicator of which homes will survive in a wildfire. And again, there are some more links at the bottom of this tab. Michelle, if you can share those with the group. And I will hand the rest of this off to our friends from PG&E.
Thanks so much, Dwight and Jennifer.
Thank you.
We're going to hold questions until we finish with PG&E.
Sounds good. I think we're getting started. Hi, Maureen. Doing a media test. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Daniel Cedeno. I oversee PG&E's government affairs and community relations for Santa Clara County. Joining me on this town hall is my colleague, Don Hall, who is our senior manager who oversees our customer team. And also joining us is our colleague, TJ Welch. He is our senior public safety specialist. He is our emergency management professional. Together, the three of us work very closely with cities and Santa Clara County on emergency management planning, coordination, notification, and such. So thank you to Maureen and thank you to Morgan Hill City staff for inviting us to be able to speak. For everyone, we're here today to talk about our community wildfire safety program. And we want to talk about what we're doing to reduce the threat of wildfire locally and system-wide, and also the opportunities for us to work together to improve our public safety power shutoff program in 2020. So we're here to give a brief presentation. We're available to answer questions. And please note also on our PG&E website, we have multiple webinars and a lot of information that's available for viewing, for download. And we're happy to direct folks at the end of this presentation as well. So with that, we can move to the next slide. So we know that everyone is currently focused on staying safe from COVID-19, and we do appreciate your participation during this challenging time. We are still doing everything we had planned to address to address the threat of catastrophic wildfires, despite the constraints imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. And PG&E has identified the essential work needed to serve our customers and communities. And this essential work includes emergency response, critical maintenance, and other work to further preparedness for our public safety power shutoff program, and also work associated with our wildfire mitigation plan, as well as still providing new customer connections. This COVID-19 pandemic does require us to work harder to prevent catastrophic wildfires and to minimize disruption to communities and individuals. So with that, we can move to a next slide where I think we can give a visual we'll get into the visual next, but we want to talk first about what our public safety power shutoff program entails. The sole purpose of our PSPS is to reduce the risk of major wildfires during severe weather. High winds can cause tree branches or debris to contact energized lines, which could damage our equipment and cause a major wildfire, making PSPS event an important wildfire safety tool for keeping our customers and our communities safe. And we recognize and know that losing power disrupts lives, especially for all of us who are sheltering at home in response to coronavirus, COVID-19, and we carefully review a combination of factors when deciding if power must be shut off, as each weather situation is unique. And so this year, we're working to improve our PSPS program by making our events smaller, shorter, and smarter for our customers. So with that, we can move to the next slide. Now, I think this slide provides a great visual as to what is a public safety power shutoff, what does it really entail. Like I mentioned, high winds from miles away can cause tree branches or debris to contact our lines, which could damage equipment and cause a major wildfire. And this visual here shows an example of the grid, and as why, you know, I get a number of questions from folks who say that there are only 5-mile-per-hour winds or less in their area. Why is my power being shut off? And so this visual here, I think, helps explain that we could have high winds farther along in the system, which could, in a tier 2 or tier 3 wildfire threat area, which we'll show later, and that could impact folks farther along in our system. And this is done for the safety of all communities and customers. And it is possible for one home to lose power, but your neighbor to still have power. And so this happens when you're receiving power from a different line than the one serving your neighbor, which could potentially come from an entirely different region. And so with that, we'll go into our next slide. And so this slide here shows an overview of some of the work we're doing in 2020. We're learning from our past PSPS events. Our goal is to reduce the number of customers impacted by a PSPS event by 1/3 compared to last year by upgrading the electric system to prevent major wildfires. And to reduce the number of customers affected by PSPS, we're installing more than 600 devices throughout the service territory that limit the size of outages, so fewer customers are without power. We're looking at installing microgrids, doing undergrounding work, and also using better weather monitoring technology and installing new weather stations to more precisely forecast the weather that could lead to PSPS events. We're looking to restore power for customers twice as fast this year. And we have to first wait until severe weather has passed. And we have added increased resources, such as increasing the number of helicopters, increasing the number of PG&E crews and resources that can help inspect lines once they're de-energized to then make a call to restore power. So a lot of this information we have on our website that can go into detail as to all the specific work we're doing in Santa Clara County. We're happy to provide that to the city and for others who have questions after this time. We can go to the next slide. So this slide here gives a good overview of some of the infrastructure that we have in Santa Clara County, and it helps show the high fire threat district map that we have developed in coordination with CAL FIRE and based on input from communications infrastructure providers and local public safety agencies. On the map, you'll see areas that are in dark red, and those are the highest fire risk areas, tier 3. And the areas in gold are tier 2, elevated risk areas. This map can be accessed at the CPUC website, cpuc.ca.gov/fire threat maps. And this gives a good layout and understanding of how much of the service territory is considered a high fire threat area, and how much infrastructure is located in those regions and such. So if we go to the next slide, we want to take a smaller dive to show the city of Morgan Hill in particular, and where in the city it is considered a tier 2 fire threat area. So if we have infrastructure that is in that tier 2, tier 3 type of areas, and again, there's high winds, it could impact folks farther along in the system. So if we move to the next slide. So this slide here shows some of the work we're doing in particular to Santa Clara County. Installing more weather stations, doing more system hardening work, installing sectionalizing devices, and other types of work that's part of our community wildfire safety program. In our website, we'll have a PowerPoint presentation that gives specifics as to where these devices are located, where our weather stations are located throughout Santa Clara County, and such. So we can move to the next slide. And what I really wanted to do was spend some time talking about the customer notification. We will always do our best to share what we know about the weather and our equipment as soon as we can, keeping in mind that weather conditions can be uncertain. Our goal, whenever the forecast will allow, is to send customer notifications 2 days ahead, 1 day ahead, just before power is being shut off. And then we'll contact through automated calls, texts, and emails. And customers will also be notified once power has been restored as well too. This year, we're updating our customer notifications about what to expect during PSPS to provide more details earlier, including which areas and addresses will be affected. And also we want to include estimated restoration times. On our website, we will be providing updates, pgne.com/PSPS updates, and through our social media channels, local news, and radio outlets. And so we can move to the next slide. So we wanted to give sort of can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So we wanted to give an example of what to expect and what to anticipate. Our watch notifications will be sent out 2 days ahead and 1 day ahead, where and when possible. We will provide the estimated shut-off window of time included in all the channels highlighted on the slide, as well as the estimated time we expect power to be restored. And this additional information for 2020 is the direct result of our customer and our stakeholder feedback we received after the events of last year. So if we go to the next slide. And so in the interest of public safety, we'll be upgrading our PSPS, PG&E will upgrade a PSPS watch to a warning, which will result in the power being shut off to customers in the specific area. And customers will be notified of that window of time and when you can expect power to be restored. And again, customers can expect daily updates until power has been restored. It's important to note that power will remain off until that high windstorm has passed and all of our equipment, every inch of the line that was de-energized has been inspected. And so I got numerous calls last year during our last events asking when the power would be turned back on. And I mentioned we have to inspect every inch of our lines before and make any repairs needed before making the call to turn power back on. So with that, we can go to the next slide. And so this slide here is great because it gives a lot of channels to go to look for additional information. We have a backup power area in our site where we have information on backup power options, safety tips, financing options, and a marketplace to search for major backup power retailers and more. We also have made available additional wildfire preparedness tools, including a weather and PSPS forecasting webpage, a safety action center, and information for medical baseline of our medical baseline program. That's an important program. Perhaps Don can speak to in a bit. It's a program where we ask residents who depend on energy for medical purposes. They can opt in to make sure PG&E is aware of that, and we can talk more about that. And it's also important to note that due to novel coronavirus, COVID-19, shelter-at-home guidelines and changing medical practitioner priorities, our customers can now self-certify their eligibility to enroll in our medical baseline program. So with that, if we go to the next slide, we have additional resources available to you. If you have any other questions, PG&E, we work directly with state agencies, our local cities, first responders, and have been working to ensure that we have, like I said, our PSPS events be shorter, smarter for our customers. And so we appreciate the time that you've given us to chat briefly on this important topic. Like I mentioned, we have our website has chock full of information, including extended webinars that go into detail on numerous of these topics that we mentioned. So I think with that, we can pass it over to you, Maureen.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We especially appreciate our partners at PG&E being here this evening to share this important information about the PSPS events. And so now we'll open it up to questions from the community. I did see one question in the chat or the Q&A that was already answered. It was asking about the due dates to have weeds cut back. The due date in Morgan Hill is in May, and the May deadline gives us the opportunity, the time that's required to actually complete that before we get into more serious weather conditions. And I think I saw one in the chat. What if my neighbors have not taken the effort to clear their property vegetation? Is that a Dwight or a Tony question?
I'll start. So it almost, I have to say, it depends. We treat weeds and brush a little bit differently. Brush being things that are, trees and other larger pieces of vegetation. If it is weeds, the best thing to do would be to contact the county weed abatement program, and I'll type that number in the chat. If it is, you're concerned because there's dead trees or other large pieces of vegetation, Dwight, why don't you go ahead and comment on how you'd like that handled?
So, yeah, if there are concerns about trees, brush, other vegetation, notify the fire marshal's office and we'll go take a look. It is important to understand, though, that you may see something that meets existing standards and there's no action that'll be taken, but we'll always take a look.
Okay, thank you. I am not seeing any more questions in the Q&A. Oh, here's one. Our recommendations, what are the recommendations for home generators?
You need a building permit. Start with a building permit and a licensed electrician.
Okay, and we don't recommend a specific type of home generator.
No.
Okay, and then I saw one pop up in the chat.
This is Don. If I could maybe comment a bit more on the generator, if you'd like me to. So again, Don Hall with PG&E. We do on our website have a site with content information advising customers about how to identify a generator that's appropriate for them. As was mentioned, if you want it to be permanently installed, it does need a permit, and it does need to be done generally by an electrical contractor. There are standalone generators that can operate independent of the home's electrical system. And certainly we have customers that are exploring that to be able to operate small appliances, equipment, microwave ovens for charging of medical devices or electronic devices like phones, et cetera. So those are different options that work for different people. And really encourage people also, an emerging area is home batteries, both that can be installed, again, on a more permanent basis, along with, say, solar. With, we hear about the Tesla Powerwall, for example. That is an emerging technology. But we also have, just like I mentioned, standalone generators, we also are seeing in the market portable battery backup that is far more robust than what battery storage has been over past years, in part driven in this area by power shutoff situations. And these are devices that can help run small appliances and equipment in your home. You leave it plugged in your home, and then when the power goes out, you have a number of hours of useful electric use for small appliances. So I think those are just some different recommendations that different people have different needs. And so I just mentioned a couple of different options.
And a follow-up question to that is gas better than propane for standalone?
I'd have to say it depends on where you are. If you're in an area where natural gas is available, we're going to discourage the addition of a propane tank.
Okay.
Marie,
All right.
may I chime in?
Yes.
I think the person may have been saying gasoline or propane because those are often
Right,
fuels.
right. But we're going to discourage the addition of propane tanks in areas that don't already have propane tanks.
I did also want to add to Don's comments about the batteries. And Silicon Valley Clean Energy, our energy provider for this area, has entered into an agreement with a company called Sunrun. That's one word, Sunrun, that will buy down part of the cost of installing a battery along with a solar system. These are very powerful units, definitely something people should look at if they're interested in both home resiliency as well as reducing their electric bill. Don will also tell you that in about a year from now, we're all going to be transitioned to time of use electrical rates. And if you can use and drain your battery every night, you will be able to minimize the amount of time that you're on the high rate. If anyone is interested in learning more, if they go to Silicon Valley Clean Energy, you go to that website and you can sign up for the interest list on the home battery system. Then they'll be contacted. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. We had another question that is in the chat. Could you explain more on property hygiene?
That is a simple term for a complicated conversation. Unfortunately, we do not have time tonight to get into any level of detail on property hygiene, but it refers back to ensuring that your property, the vegetation and the combustible materials on your property do not create a threat to your home.
Okay. Dwight, if they would like further information or to follow up in detail, what would be the best contact for them?
I'm going to ask them to start with the web resources that we gave. Due to COVID this year, it's really hard to do one-on-one meetings, but if necessary, we will do our best to accommodate.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, back to the Q&A from D. Kelly. I have a question for the city personnel. I've been considering a permanent backup generator installed. Can my HOA prevent me from installing one because of noise?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe. Does Don Larkin want to jump in on that?
That was my answer.
Maybe.
This is Don. I would say, yeah, maybe is the answer. I think you have to look at your HOA's code conditions, et cetera. They probably have issues besides just noise. Where are you going to place it? Is it going to be visible? The aesthetics, et cetera. There are some manufacturers that promote or that have as a feature a very low noise operating capability. Honda is one that is known for, and there are others that are similar. So maybe there is a decibel level, and if you could look to see what the rating on the generator, those would be things to look at. And yes, you should talk to the HOA before you do it so that they don't tell you you have to take it out.
And I have to say too, I think the reason it's the answer is maybe there's no state law that overrides CC&Rs. So if your CC&Rs would prohibit it, then it's likely prohibited. I've reviewed a lot of CC&Rs. I'm not aware of any that would prohibit a battery backup if that was the option that you were wanting to go with.
Okay, thank you. We still have a few more minutes here. If anyone has questions, they can drop them in the Q&A or you can raise your hand. And Michelle, if you can remind me how those who are calling in can raise their hand.
*9.
*9. Okay, we'll give it another minute or so. If there are any other questions from the community members participating? Any other updates that any of the city team wants to provide since we have a few extra minutes? We're a quiet bunch this evening. It was the first day of school. Anybody who's a parent is probably exhausted at this point.
I'm a parent, so I'm happier to be here with all of you than dealing with the online school. I just wanted to conclude and let everybody know that when you're preparing for, you know, we really, our preparedness is about all hazards and not necessarily specific hazards when you're developing your kit. Just remember, there's a lot of things we can't predict or forecast, and just to focus on what we call all hazard preparedness. And my email address is on the city website, and I'm here for any further questions that folks may have or any interest in the programs that we brought up.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. We did have one more question pop in through the Q&A. Who is in charge of the water tanks located in Jackson Oaks in Morgan Hill? The tank behind my house has been running constantly.
I can take that. I can take that one, Maureen. The water tanks are actually owned by the city water department and maintained by the city water department. I don't know who to contact to check on the status of those, but
Yoni's on the call here.
okay.
Yeah, you can email me and I can put my email in your chat and we can follow up.
Okay, that's from Cindy Stilts.
I'll put my email in right now.
Awesome. And another question, because my landline went out during the last October outage, was that a matter for PG&E to address or Frontier? Lives in Yagas Valley. It's probably hard to know for certain, but
yeah, this is Don, and I with PG&E. I can. It depends. I'm not sure what the conditions were. If it was just a power outage, or you know, we do get high winds in these conditions, and so there can actually be damage to either phone lines, power lines. I would say that PG&E's efforts to make our system more robust and the state's efforts to look at essential services. We are coordinating with essential providers, which include telecom customers and water agencies. And there is statewide legislation that is requiring telecom customers like Frontier, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint to harden their systems and to have backup power systems to help support telecommunications and the essential communications during events. So hopefully the system will perform better this year.
If I can add, Maureen, so remember that most of our phones that we use are the wireless phones that rely on electricity to operate. So they're definitely not going to work when there's a power outage. If you do have what we call an old style phone, that those of us with this hair of this color can remember, that you keep around just for these purposes, it is possible that Frontier did lose service. One of the downfalls of switching from an analog to digital systems, like, you know, society is constantly transitioning in that area, is that digital systems almost always rely on electricity. So somewhere down the line, they could have had a digital device that failed. The city is working with them. I shouldn't overstate what we're doing. We're pushing them to better make their system reliable during power outages by putting in battery backups on those digital links. If you have your home phone service from Charter Spectrum, this is the exact same situation where they have a highly digitized system and they are very susceptible to power outages, regardless of whether you have an old style phone or a new one. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions and we're just about to 6:30. So I will thank everybody for participating with us this evening, and especially again, thank PG&E for being with us to talk about this important issue. And we hope that we'll see the community at our September 10th town hall, which will be the next one. And please do take care over these next few days with the very, very extreme high temperatures. If you know folks without air conditioning or who have special needs, please take the time to somehow check in with them in, of course, a socially distant, appropriate way. So take good care and have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you.